Every year on Palm Sunday, we celebrate the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem. And in those days, the custom was for the king, after being victorious in battle, to enter triumphantly into the city, and people would wave palm branches, a sign of victory. But when Jesus came into Jerusalem, he wasn't riding on a horse, he was riding on a donkey. And so it signifies his humility, that though Jesus is the Lord of all, he is also meek and humble of heart. And that's the prophecy we have in Zechariah, the first reading today. And Jesus invites us to come to him and to be like children. Come to me, all who labor and find life burdensome, and I will give you rest. We're invited to be innocent and trusting like children, and humble and meek, just as Jesus is. The opposite of humility and meekness is pride, where we say, I know what is best, and we try to control everything in our lives. If we look at the apparitions of Mary to the children in the world, we see that almost all of the approved apparitions, she appears to children because of their humility and innocence. This year we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of Our Lady of Fatima. She appeared to Lucia, who was 11 years old, Jacinta, who was 9, and Francisco, who was 7. And she appeared to them on the 13th of each month, May, June, July, August 19th, September, and October. And the message was calling for prayer and sacrifice for the conversion of sinners, especially in praying the rosary. And so we're coming up to the celebration of the feast, or the anniversary of her visit in July, which was on July 13th. And the children on that day gathered at the Cova de Aria. There were 5,000 spectators that gathered that morning because the word had spread that they were seeing Our Lady. And they observed a little white cloud that came in from the east and rested on the oak tree there. And Lucia said, "What do you want of me?" to Our Lady, whom they saw. And Mary said, "I want you to come here on the 13th day of next month and to continue to pray the rosary every day in honor of Our Lady of the Rosary, in order to obtain peace for the world and the end of the war." At that time, they were in World War I throughout all of Europe. Lucia asked who she was and if she would perform a miracle so that others would believe. And she said, "In October, I will tell you who I am and what I want, and I will perform a miracle for all to see." They brought her special requests for healing and for the sick in that village. And Mary said, "Sacrifice yourselves for sinners and say often, especially when you make some sacrifice, 'O my Jesus, this is for love of you, for the conversion of sinners, and in reparation for the offenses committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary.'" And that moment, she opened her hands, and right in front of the children, the earth opened up, and they had a vision, and they were able to see hell. Lucia described it as a vast sea of fire, and plunged in the flames were demons and lost souls, as though red-hot coals blackened in human form, floating about in the fire with clouds of smoke and sparks falling. And they were shrieking and groaning with sorrow and despair that horrified the children and caused them to tremble with fear. Mary said to them, "You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. In order to save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If people do what I ask, many souls will be saved, and there will be peace. The war is going to end, but if people do not stop offending God, another war, even worse, will begin in the reign of Pope Pius XI, which is what happened in 1938 with World War II. When you see the night illumined by an unknown light, know that it is the great sign that God gives you, that he is going to punish the world by means of war, hunger, and persecution of the Church and of the Holy Father. To prevent it, I shall come and ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart. If people attend to my requests, Russia will be converted and the world will have peace. If not, Russia will spread its errors throughout the world, fomenting wars and persecutions of the Church. The good will be martyred, the Holy Father will have much to suffer, and various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph, the Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and it will be converted, and a certain period of peace will be granted to the world. Then she went on to say, when you pray the rosary, say this prayer, O my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy. And then she went back up into the air and vanished from their sight. Just some comments on the message of Our Lady in July. And there certainly is an increase of sin in the world and a decrease in the sense of sin, or of people taking aware and being aware of the seriousness of sin. Even now, some call into question the reality of hell or downplay it, whereas Jesus spoke of it frequently, describing it as the place where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Jacinta later said, if men only knew what awaits them in eternity, they would do everything in their power to change their lives. The children immediately began to take up prayer and sacrifice for sinners. They knelt on the ground outside. They went without water throughout the whole day in the hot summer months. They gave up their food. They wore ropes tightly around their waist, all to pray and offer these sacrifices for the conversion of sinners. About prayer, Lucia said, never consider the time wasted that you spend in prayer. Let time be lacking for everything else, but never for prayer. The principal cause of evil in the world is the lack of union with God in prayer. And that's the message of Jesus in the gospel today, too. Come to me, all who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. That means to come with our burdens and everything that concerns us and weighs us down to Jesus in prayer, to offer them to him, or we can offer them to him at this celebration of the Mass, so that we can receive rest, peace in our souls.